Tried to custom design a website, you know that one of the hardest things to do is custom coding. But if you've ever taken a webinar from our next speaker on the online stage, Rache, the Square Stylist, you know that she is one of the wizards of custom coding. In fact, she refers to custom coding as an art. So here to talk to you about all of the amazing things that you can do with your websites on Squarespace using custom code, please give a digital warm welcome to Rache, founder of Squarespace.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here to talk about the art of coding in Squarespace. I am Rache, the founder of Squarespace and the creator of the Standout Squarespace program. I've been using Squarespace for the last 7 years, and in celebration of Squarespace's 20th anniversary, here is a photo of mine more than 20 years ago. I don't have a lot of childhood photos to choose from, but obviously I love florals. I also love performing, dancing, singing, and painting. I've been drawn to anything creative. I don't necessarily have a natural talent to everything, but what my mom instilled in me is that I can excel in anything that I set my heart and mind into. So years later, I founded Squarespace. It is a creative resource library that enables designers to stand out with skills, honor code as a craft, and create the unexpected. I believe in weaving different skills such as design and code to create unexpected things and push the envelope of what's possible. Today, I'd like to talk to you about my coding journey and insights. I'll start with sharing how I started with coding, why I chose to code in Squarespace, and of course, I'll share some best practices, and there will be a live demo of how we can implement coded features in this project. And of course, I'll leave you with some study guide on how to keep learning code. You might be curious how I started coding. In essence, I had no design experience. I also have no prior coding experience, but I took every project as a learning opportunity. Squarespace made it easy for me 7 years ago to get started because it's really easy. But as creatives, we also encounter requirements, and most of the time, we have an aesthetic vision, and there's a huge gap between that aesthetic vision and what's possible built in within Squarespace. So I knew I needed to learn code to bridge that gap. And so years later, I just am marveled, fascinated by how magical it is to turn my vision into actual website experiences through coding. Now, you might be wondering, isn't Squarespace a no-code platform? Why do we need to code in Squarespace? Let me preface this by saying that learning code is not a requirement. You can definitely get started offering Squarespace web design services without writing a single line of code. That's how powerful Squarespace is. However, learning code opens a lot of possibilities for us. Learning code indeed enables us to use Squarespace or any platform to its full potential. Generally, I believe we code for the following reasons. First, we code for differentiation. Code allows us to create distinct, unique, stunning features for a brand such that the brand can evoke its true brand identity. So here's a glimpse of what we can create using code such that we can create expressive and effective websites. I just would like to note that simple tweaks can make a huge difference. We don't need to code anything from scratch. In fact, most of these are actually just leveraging built-in features from Squarespace. So let me get started with some examples. So here is a design that is inspired by folder tabs, but this is actually just using a summary block. And then this design is also powered by a bit of JavaScript and a little bit of CSS. And I'm just using the typical gallery block, but just made it fun and interactive with this draggable feature. Then this timeline feature, which can also be used for services or other lists, is actually just leveraging the built-in list section. And it's quite easy to switch from one color theme to the other. And of course, we can save it as a saved section such that we can use it across other pages of the website. Then we don't have a built-in tabbed menu within Squarespace. Hence, this is using a summary block again. So we just need to use a bit of JavaScript and CSS to create this section. And clients typically ask for this feature because it's a great way to condense a lot of information. And then another example is where I used auto layout list section to create this horizontal scrolling gallery. And of course, I also used a real gallery section to create this spotlight gallery. There are a lot more possibilities, but I just would like to highlight that we can definitely create these amazing things with code. Not only that, code allows us to differentiate ourselves as designers. When I was starting out, I actually got intimidated because first, English is not my first language. Second, I have no design degree, but I believe combining my design vision with coding allowed me to come up with these breakthrough ideas and features. Aside from differentiation, we also code for quality. So code helps us meet modern web design standards in terms of accessibility, responsiveness, performance, and searchability. Fortunately, Squarespace makes it easy for us to meet this web design standards because it provides a robust base framework or starting point. It is actually designed to meet these web standards, probably the best amongst all platforms that I've tried. And I'm not playing favorites because I actually have programs for other platforms too. But Squarespace is the best starting point, especially for us designers. To give examples, for example, we have this design. If we don't use code, if we'd like to create a sideway text like this, we would just use a design software and design it with the image and then upload it together with a photo. However, when we embed the text to images, that means the text won't be readable to screen readers as well as search engines. And that means we won't comply to accessibility standards. That's also the case for headlines, wherein we need to use various fonts within one line. I see sometimes we resort to using images to create these text with a different font, but that will also compromise accessibility and SEO. So it's just best for us to code these little tweaks. Another example is we promote responsiveness. So I added an image beneath the text because this is part of my branding. And I can actually do this just by using Fluid Engine, but I can perfect it on a certain device, but not make it responsive in other device sizes. So I always try to scale and shrink my browser size and see how the elements react. And this can only be done using code. And again, we use code to promote responsiveness. Another reason that we use code is for ease. Not only do we aim for our websites to be easy to build, but also easy to manage and maintain, because it's simplicity that makes Squarespace shine. And as much as possible, we don't want to add codes that adds to the complexity of the site. We would like to maintain that simplicity. And so we leverage code to keep the editing experience delightful. For example, when I styled this particular auto layout list section, I made sure that the client can still edit the images, the text, and the descriptions as they can normally do, but I just added CSS to style it. So notice when I added CSS, it's still the same editing experience, but we totally transformed it with some styling. That's also the case for styling collection list and items. For example, blog post list and items. They are not as flexible as fluid engine sections, right? And then it would be easy to assume that we can, for example, recreate this particular feature using Fluid Engine. But using Fluid Engine would mean that if the client needs to add a portfolio entry, they would need to move all the blocks. So the more practical, easy to manage option would be to use a portfolio collection or a blog collection and just style it using CSS. That's also the case for our blog post. So I used code to transform the linear blog post layout to something like this to make it more immersive and engaging. So whenever we add code, we always ask the question, what will make it easy for clients to update? We also code for creativity because I believe code really sparks creativity and confidence. Learning code one technique at a time is like collecting threads to weave beautiful, unique patterns. The more threads we collect, the more beautiful pattern iterations we can create. It's actually convenient for us to rely solely on plugins, tools, extensions, but that means capabilities are limited to what the tool provides. So we just need to remember, finding your edge isn't in following the rules, it's in learning the rules to break them. And as we build our skills in code, we also build our confidence in ourselves and the possibilities. So for example, in the student group that I mentor, I actually just presented this particular workshop. I call it Stacked Side Tabs. But then one of my students actually thought of combining this with another workshop that we had where I rotate some of the titles. And this is how we came up with this folder tabs idea. Another example is this image on hover feature. Initially, I just had a workshop about showing the image upon hover, but then we combined it with videos. So not only we can show images in hover, we can also show videos in hover. So when you learn a particular technique, that doesn't mean it's only isolated to that block. You can actually apply that to any element or block within the site. I hope you've been interested in learning code. So if you're interested to learn code, here are some best practices from my end. First is to maximize built-in features. I cannot stress this enough because whenever I'm designing, I always try to make use and leverage the built-in design options that are already within Squarespace, like section dividers, image shapes, and effects. And that's why I even have this design file wherein I have the built-in shapes, dividers, buttons, and icons of Squarespace. And this is my starting point for every design. And then we also leverage built-in options within block sections and global styles before adding code. So I recommend that you get familiar with all those styles before we get started, even with adding code. Another best practice is to be mindful of any code that you add. It's not mindlessly pasting anything from the internet. We need to understand how it affects the site. So for example, if you find a line of code, you can easily search for what it means. There are a lot of documentation online, and these are some guiding questions. Will it slow down the site? So if you add that code, will it slow down the site? And this is the reason why for most of my solutions, I always do CSS first, because most of the time when you add JavaScript, that would most likely slow down the site. But if it's just CSS, then it might even be better than adding images. So this is an important question to ask. Then will it affect accessibility? So there are plugins. When we add them to the site, it might affect accessibility. So whenever we add codes, we need to revisit if it's navigable by keyboard, if it will affect anything that is visible to screen reader, that is accessible to screen reader users. And then another consideration is, will it unintentionally affect other elements? So when you paste something, how will it affect other elements? In the demo later, I'll show you how we can scope elements properly such that we avoid affecting other elements. Another question to ask is, how does it respond to browser changes in various device sizes? So this is a pro tip that I have. Whenever I build sections, I build it one section at a time. And before I switch or before I move forward to the other section, I actually would check the responsiveness and browser compatibility first. As I've demonstrated earlier, I just try to shrink and scale the browser size and see how it will affect the layout. I also have like key devices where I test my sections in, and I check those before I move forward to the next section. And then how does it show up in different browsers? As I mentioned, I also have, we cannot actually guarantee compatibility with non-modern versions of browsers. So I only test with the modern versions of browsers. And then I have this particularly indicated in my contracts and proposal. So the client is aware that we're using modern browsers in our testing. Another best practice is to keep it simple yet memorable. In your journey as you learn code, you'll encounter a lot of techniques, and it will be tempting for you to actually pack every website or every project with all the techniques that you've gathered. But here's an advice for me: choose just up to 3 key features that will be prominent across the site. So in my case, I used repeatable elements and sections. So for this particular layout that I have, notice that I reuse most sections from the homepage across the other pages. So notice how I have this carousel on the homepage, and I also just repeat it on the about page, but probably I can apply a different color theme. Also, the sideway text, you can see like these elements across the site. Not only will it make it easy for us to build, but it will also make the website more memorable because there are features that are distinct to it. So I just use repeatable elements and sections. And then we also want to make it easy to manage and update. So we customize existing elements and refrain from just copying and pasting code blocks. So there are a lot of code blocks that are meant for other platforms, like code snippets that are meant for other platforms. When we just copy and paste that to a code block in Squarespace, that means the image in there, the text in there won't be easily changed by our clients. So we don't want to take that control away from our clients. So we'd like to make sure that we're just leveraging existing elements. And then make it easy for clients to change the color theme as I've demonstrated. So there's a way for us to actually like instruct the browser what color to use for a certain element. But if we do that using code, then that means the client will lose control under site style. So if they change the color theme, it won't follow the one in the site style. So as much as possible, I don't instruct the browser what about like the exact color. I try to, as much as possible, use the custom color palette options within Squarespace. And of course, consider how clients will maintain the site. So my last best practice is to build a collection of code solutions and techniques that you can easily refer to for future projects. In my case, I have this database, and I just have this collection. And as I mentioned, you can combine these techniques. It's just an easy reference. And I call it toolkit because you can definitely combine them, just use these techniques together or tweak them. So we'll proceed with the live demo. You can scan this QR code or just go to squarestylist.com/circleday23. Let me know if you have any. Problems accessing this. It will lead you to this tab, and I used the courses feature. So it's I use the courses feature for you to easily refer to as I go through the demo. So I used the courses feature, and our first is to download the project assets. There's a wireframe design if you're interested, and if you'd like to access the images too. You don't need to do it now, because we'll breeze through this. And then our next is to view the project references. So I'll be using the ID Finder extension in a while, so you can install that extension. And then the link to the demo website, which I'll show in a while. And I also did some pre-work. So for example, the font settings are here. Just so I won't need to demonstrate it now because it's quite straightforward. So this is the font settings, the colors, the hex code right here, and the spacing. Let me know if you have questions about this. Now you'll also see the code snippets right here, and you can easily copy and paste the code, but we'll not copy and paste the code. I'll show you exactly the rationale behind each. So just know that this is where we refer to when I look into when I demonstrate the different techniques. All right. So let's first show the final project so you have an idea. So it's just leveraging most features, and then we'll just add the sideway text feature so that you can code easily. We'll also transform the marquee block and the sideway text. And if you have more time, I'll also share some more techniques. I hope I'll have more time. So let me switch to this view. And for this demo site, this is not using any code, just leveraging built-in features. But I'd like to show you the features that I used. This is an image block, and I used a shape block below to add that outline. Just make sure that the image is set to fill. And then this is just actually using the scale text feature. All right, so let me know if you have questions around this. I just maximize the width, set it to scale text. And then also this one is an image with a shape block behind so that we have strokes. And then this is the marquee. This is another section. Notice how we have, this is a line block. And then this section where we have scrolling happening is actually a list section. Carousel with a maximum of 5 columns. There. So now let's start with a sticky text scrolling. Oh, sorry. Let me just share with you, we won't need to code this because what I did, if you remember, I set the font miscellaneous to square display Salati. This is the font that I want for this logo. And so when we actually set our text to monospace, it will apply the miscellaneous option. So I go to monospace, there, no coding. So we'll just add our sideway text. It's a lot easier for me to add it here, but it will be the same code that we'll need to add. So if we add a text right here, again, I'll just say considered treasures, and I'll also set this to monospace. Now, what we'll do is find the section ID. Again, I'm using the ID Finder extension, and it's in the resources. If I click that ID Finder, it will tell the section ID. Because if you'll find in our notes in the course, there has to be a section ID to make sure that this change will only be applied to this section. So I'll copy this section. And under CSS, we access the CSS by typing / type CSS. And then we'll type the section ID right here. And then basically what we want is to target this particular text. And one technique that I'd like to share is to use our inspector tool. So we bring that up by hitting Command-Shift-C on our keyboard. If you hit Command-Shift-C and make sure, and we click on any of the elements like this. Oh, I think it's not showing my entire screen. Okay, sorry, okay. I think it's just, okay, let me try once again, because I wanted to show this. Okay, it's not showing our inspector tool. Okay, let me, so in the inspect, when you click this, it will show our class elements. Actually, it will also show up right here. It says code. That's the selector that we want. And you can also refer to our course, wherein it selects that particular element. So it says pre-code. It only targets that monospace element. And essentially, we're just setting writing dash mode to vertical RL. As I mentioned, before you add any code, you can search what this means, and you'll find examples online of how it affects the site. So if we copy this, again, we just need to make sure that it's applied to the right section. So we'll go to our section. And again, the CSS. And instead of this section ID placeholder, I'll copy this section ID that we grabbed using the Finder extension and then paste it right here. There you go. So once we add that, notice how this is now sideways. And if you'd like it the other way around, and you can just remove this rotate. You can actually comment it out by adding 2 forward slashes. So now it's the other way around. I'm not sure if that's visible in your end. Now all we need to do is stretch it right here and just make sure we again use this scale text feature. Now we have that sideways text. And if we need to add that to other section like this one, all we need to do is repeat the process, but this time we need to use another section ID. Now let's move forward with the marquee or the scrolling block. So if you go to our rotate scrolling block, these are the codes that we need. So again, we need to use the section ID and assign overflow clip. And then we need to grab the fluid engine block. Let me try if I can. So I would like to show you, I think, yeah, let me just try to present the window. So you can, okay, all right, thank you. So if we go and so notice how right here, if I it's best to view this site on an incognito window, or you just add this question mark, no redirect. And then we bring up the inspector tool. We do that by hitting Command-Shift-C, and then just make sure this icon is toggled on there. And then when you click on that particular block, it will lead you to the elements inside it. So the key is for us to search up and look for the FE block, right? So it's right here, it says the marquee is inside that FE block. So we want to determine the top FE block. So right here, this is what I'll copy. And that's the FE block that we will use in this code, all right? So let me just take note of that right here. This is the FE block. And if you'll see right here, the FE block actually should have a dot before it because it's a class selector. So that's .fe block, and we'll add this code, rotate -5 degrees. And it's not as, and it seems like it's not showing real time. I think there's, if it's not showing real time, just refresh your browser. There, now it's rotated like that. And the reason why we're adding this overflow clip is because we need to make sure that we have this section ID overflow clip. All right, sorry. So right here, I'll add again the section ID and say overflow clip, because otherwise there will be horizontal scrolling, right? So if you're encountering horizontal scrolling, just add that overflow clip. All right, so that's the same process for the other rotating block. Let me just check with Anna if I am. All right, so yeah, we have another, oh, okay, sorry. Oops. There, oops. Oh, okay. Okay, all right, so we have another one that I'd like to show really quick. I hope that guides you for the other marquee block. It's just the other rotation. So if it's positive, then it's clockwise. If it's negative, then it's counterclockwise. So just change this value and another FE block. And then the sticky image block is so the scrolling block. Okay, so it's just the same as well. If you'd like to change the text color, and as I mentioned, I don't recommend this if you'd like the color theme to be easily switched. And then there's also this technique, and it's actually just positioning a fluid engine block to be sticky. So I think it's quite easy, because we only need to, again, select that block and then apply that particular technique. So I'd like to share, I believe, okay. So for example, I just would like to share it with you quickly. This one I created by making sure that the stacking of this text is below by clicking the text and then making sure it's stacked below, move backwards using that icon. And then for this text, I made sure it's above the text. And then for this other text, I made sure it's stacked below the image right there. And then from here, I again get the fluid engine block, ID by hitting this Fluid Engine and then copying this Fluid Engine block. And from here, I just add that FE block, make sure it has a dot before, because it's a class selector, position sticky, then top 5 VH, for example. That means it's sticky from the top from 5. Oops, sorry, that should be dot FE block and then the ID. When we view this, it will then be sticky like that and create this effect. So yes, I think I can move forward with the questions. Yeah, let me know if, okay, so just a few notes about keep learning code. Practice makes progress. It doesn't happen overnight, so I really recommend that you practice and celebrate simple wins. This is my topmost advice. Sometimes we get frustrated when we mistype things. I would tell you that's totally normal. And then just keep on learning and trying. You don't need to learn everything about coding. As I mentioned, you have an aesthetic vision, and this is currently what you can create. You just need to bridge that gap between your aesthetic vision and your current skills. So you don't have to code the next Squarespace. You just have to be able to have the skills to achieve the vision that you have. All right, so I think I can move forward to the question and answer. Okay, Anna asks, how long will this resource be on your website for? Just access it anytime. I'll probably add more. I have like the last technique that I added right there, which I wasn't able to cover, but I'll add a video about it. So access it anytime. And I'll add the link to the recording if the recording will be available after. Anna asked, where do you get your inspo for web design? Oh, good question. I am drawn to paper textures. So I try not to search too much online. I try to look for magazines, editorials. So you'll find that most of my work is inspired by those. How does the sideway text appear in mobile? Oh, good question. It's the same. In mobile, you can totally change the height. It's also sideway on mobile. And in CSS, we also have techniques to apply codes, not on desktop, but not apply it on mobile. And then, do we have other questions? Yeah, let me know. Do we have other questions? How do you approach loading times when added custom code? Oh, as I mentioned, for the code solutions that I come up with, I make sure that they do not affect loading time as much. My approach is always CSS first. So if I don't need to use JavaScript, I won't, because JavaScript is the one that contributes to the loading time. Where can I find the Adobe XD file? Oh, the wireframe is accessible via the course page. So if you click on the wireframe design, the very first lesson, you can click that and it will lead you to the file. Any other questions? Yeah. Do you want me to demonstrate the last technique? How have you tackled the incessant problems that tablets given Squarespace sites, especially with custom code? I haven't actually. There are tablet issues, but I actually just make sure that I maximize the widths that I assign per block. And some of them we can actually address via code, like changing the grid area. But most of the time, I just make sure that I maximize the number of width of columns assigned to every block to make sure it's not as narrow and mobile. But in terms of custom code, I'm not seeing a lot of issues, specifically in tablet. I don't use any external code editor. I just use the custom CSS panel. So I think I have enough time to share with you the last technique, which is adding vertical line borders. So you just need to copy this code. I won't be able to walk you through how it works right now, but it's quite straightforward because we'll be using the shape block. So if you'd like to add vertical line borders like this, just paste that. And what happens is, if you'd like to add a line, then you add a shape, but this time you change it to keystone. And then change the stroke color to whatever stroke color you want. I'll also change the thickness to 1. And then once we save it, it will now become a vertical line. Let me just refresh. I hope I won't be cut off. Okay, it's just refreshing. So upon adding that, oops. I wasn't able to save it, that's why. So always save your work, Command S. Oops. It should be. Oh, it should be a keystone and, okay, let me just save it again. Okay. Oh, it's not, that's something I need to figure out. But as soon as you add that code, that should be a vertical line. There might be something. Yeah, let me just. Yeah, do you have other questions for me? Yeah, let me make sure it's the entire block. Yeah, so that's it. So let me just change the code inside our course. It should be like that, and we'll be able to easily add this vertical line. And with that, you can easily create designs such as this one. Yeah, do you have any advice on how to hand over the site to clients when custom code is used in a way that can still manage and maintain the site on their own? Yes, as I mentioned, you just add the code and they should not touch the code at all. So it should be in a way that they don't need to touch any code to make any changes. Like this one, to add any vertical lines, they don't need to touch the code. All they need to do is add a shape, a keystone shape, right? So if I add a shape block again, just instruct them that they can easily just switch to keystone, change the stroke color, and there, they can easily add these vertical border lines. Yeah, so I think that's it. You can always go through the squarestylist.com/circleday23 for the references of this, and we'll have the recording up as well. I hope this has been helpful. You may check out my Instagram.com/squarestylist. I hope this has been helpful.